General Qasim, a name whispered with a mixture of reverent awe and chilling dread, stood as a colossus within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. His gaze, often described as cold and calculating, reflected the unwavering resolve of a man who had not only survived the tumultuous birth of the revolution, but had actively sculpted its global reach. He was the architect of regional destabilization, a shadowy puppet master whose strings extended across the Middle East, pulling at the threads of proxy wars and igniting the flames of dissent in nations deemed adversaries. His ruthlessness was legendary, his strategic acumen undeniable, making him a revered figure among his loyalists and a terrifying specter to his enemies. The geopolitical landscape quivered under the weight of escalating tensions. Iran, ever defiant, pushed against the boundaries of international patience, its nuclear ambitions and regional interventions creating a volatile powder keg. On the other side, nations like Israel watched with bated breath, their intelligence agencies working tirelessly to counter Qasem's expanding influence. The stakes were not merely political. They were existential, each move a calculated gamble with the fragile peace of an entire region hanging in the balance. In the clandestine world of Mossad, a different kind of legend was known simply as the Raven. This operative was a phantom, a whisper in the wind whose past was as shrouded in mystery as their movements were precise. Yet, beneath the layers of professional detachment lay a burning ember of personal tragedy. Years ago, a loved one, innocent and caught in the crossfire of one of Qasem's meticulously planned attacks, had been lost. The Raven carried that loss not as a burden, but as a crucible, forging an unyielding resolve that fueled every mission, every silent step into the heart of danger. This was more than a job. It was a personal vendetta, a quiet promise made to a ghost. The inciting incident arrived with brutal clarity. A devastating attack, bearing all the hallmarks of Qasem's network, ripped through a bustling marketplace, leaving behind a trail of unimaginable carnage and despair. The world recoiled in horror, and the cries for retribution echoed through the halls of power. For Mossad, this was the line crossed, the final act that demanded an unequivocal response. The conflict, already simmering, now boiled over, demanding a decisive counterstrike. But the challenge was monumental. Traditional methods, the surgical strikes and targeted disappearances, were deemed too risky, too likely to ignite an all-out war. Qasem was a ghost, rarely appearing in public, his security a fortress of human and technological shields. A bold, unconventional plan was needed, something audacious enough to penetrate his defenses, yet subtle enough to avoid immediate, catastrophic escalation. The clock was ticking, and the pressure was immense. Initial intelligence, painstakingly gathered from a network of informants and intercepted communications, revealed a sliver of opportunity. Qasem, the reclusive general, was slated to make a rare public appearance. He would address a major protest in Tehran, an event expected to draw tens of thousands, a maelstrom of dissent and revolutionary fervor. The irony was not lost on the Mossad analysts. The architect of revolution would stand within its very heart, exposed. The mission, as it was laid out, was impossible. Assassinate Qasem amidst the chaotic throng of a public demonstration, deep within enemy territory, surrounded by his loyalists and a populace both hostile and unpredictable. It was a suicide mission, plain and simple. Yet, when the file landed on the Raven's desk, there was no hesitation. The cold, hard facts of near-certain failure and inevitable death were weighed against the burning desire for retribution. The Raven accepted, a silent nod to the ghost of the past, ready to walk into the storm. The Raven's acceptance of the mission was not a rush of adrenaline, but a settling into a grim, unyielding purpose. The first phase demanded an immersion so profound it bordered on self-erasure. Months melted into a blur of intensive training, not just in combat or espionage, but in the subtle art of becoming someone else entirely. Hour after hour, the Raven drilled in Farsi, perfecting not just pronunciation, but the nuances of regional dialects, the inflections that betrayed a foreigner. Cultural assimilation was paramount, understanding the intricate social codes, the unspoken rules of Iranian society, the rhythm of daily life in Tehran. Every gesture, every glance, every casual interaction had to be authentic, effortless. Building a cover identity was an elaborate tapestry woven with threads of meticulously gathered intelligence. The Raven would become a seemingly ordinary Iranian citizen, a disgruntled student perhaps, or a quiet activist, someone disillusioned with the regime, but not overtly rebellious. This persona had to blend seamlessly into the burgeoning protest movement, a face among thousands, yet one capable of gaining trust and access. The backstory was rich with plausible details: a rural upbringing, a move to the city for university, a slow-burning resentment against the economic hardships and political repression. The transformation was complete, a new skin worn with chilling precision. The mission was not a solitary endeavor. A small, elite Mossad support unit, a phantom limb of the Raven's operation, began to coalesce. Each member was a master of their craft, operating in deep cover, their presence in Tehran as undetectable as a whisper in a hurricane. There was the communications specialist, a ghost in the digital ether, capable of weaving secure networks out of thin air. The logistics expert, a master of procurement and movement, ensuring supplies and escape routes were always a step ahead. And the surveillance operative, a silent observer whose eyes and ears were everywhere, a constant guardian against the unseen threats. Their roles were specialized, their synchronization vital, their lives inextricably linked to the Raven's success. The moment of infiltration was a descent into a labyrinth. Tehran, a city of millions, was also a sprawling, oppressive surveillance state. Revolutionary Guard patrols were ubiquitous, their stern faces and heavy weapons a constant reminder of the regime's iron grip. The Basij militia, the eyes and ears of the state among the populace, were even more insidious, their casual presence masking a fierce loyalty and a readiness to report any deviation. The Raven moved through this landscape with an almost preternatural awareness. A shadow among shadows, every step calculated to avoid suspicion. The initial hurdles were a constant test of nerve and skill, each street corner a potential trap, each casual glance a possible judgment. Establishing contact within the genuine protest movement required a delicate touch. The Raven couldn't simply appear and demand entry. Instead, it was a subtle dance of shared grievances, of carefully chosen words in hushed conversations in dimly lit cafes, of participating in small, clandestine gatherings. Slowly, painstakingly, the Raven began to connect with genuine protest organizers, earning their trust not through overt declarations, but through a shared sense of injustice, a quiet solidarity that transcended the manufactured persona. The moral ambiguity of using these earnest individuals as unwitting pawns in a lethal game gnawed at the Raven, a persistent ache beneath the hardened exterior. These were not the enemy, yet they were being used. A close call arrived like a sudden, icy breath. During a seemingly innocuous street demonstration, a Revolutionary Guard officer, his eyes sharp and suspicious, singled out the Raven from a small crowd. A casual question, laced with veiled menace, hung in the air. The Raven's heart hammered, but the years of training kicked in. A quick, almost imperceptible shift in body language, a practiced look of weary compliance, a perfectly rehearsed, bland response about economic hardship. The tension was palpable, a hair's breadth from exposure. But the Raven's quick thinking, honed to a razor's edge, narrowly avoided a catastrophic interrogation. The officer, seemingly satisfied, moved on, leaving the Raven trembling internally. the brush with disaster a stark reminder of the ever-present danger. This near miss, ironically, solidified the Raven's standing. The apparent bravery in the face of authority, the quiet defiance, resonated with the protest leadership. Access, once a distant goal, now became possible. The Raven gained entry to inner circles, to strategic planning meetings held in hushed tones behind closed doors. The target, General Qasem, felt closer than ever, yet the chosen battlefield was revealing its true, volatile nature. The protest movement, a force for change, was also a powder keg, and the Raven was now standing at its very heart, a spark waiting for the opportune moment. The path to Qasem was opening, but it was fraught with unforeseen perils, a journey into the eye of a gathering storm. The Raven seamlessly deepened the cover, transforming from a mere participant into an active vocal force within the burgeoning protest movement. Every carefully chosen word, every passionate declaration against the regime resonated with the disillusioned masses. The fabricated backstory, a student disillusioned by the lack of opportunity and the stifling oppression, became a living, breathing reality. Respect and trust, hard-won commodities in a climate of paranoia, began to accumulate around the Raven, solidifying a position of influence within the core group of organizers. It was a dangerous tightrope walk, each step a calculated performance, yet the commitment to the role was absolute. Amidst the swirling currents of dissent, an unexpected human element emerged. The Raven found a strange, almost unsettling connection with a young, idealistic student named Layla. Her fiery passion, her unwavering belief in the power of peaceful resistance, was a stark contrast to the Raven's hardened pragmatism. Layla saw in the Raven a kindred spirit, a voice of reason and strength in a sea of fear. She was bright, articulate, and utterly committed to her cause, a pure flame in the encroaching darkness. Her trust, freely given, felt like a heavy burden, a stark reminder of the mission's inherent deception. Unwittingly, Layla became an invaluable source of information. Her access to the protest's intricate logistics, her knowledge of key figures, and even her casual observations about the expected security details for VIPs attending the rally were like pieces of a complex puzzle falling into place. She spoke of various access points, of the expected routes for dignitaries, of the internal security arrangements the organizers themselves were putting in place to maintain order. Each piece of data, innocently conveyed during late-night discussions over lukewarm tea, was meticulously filed away by the Raven, cross-referenced with the Mossad's own intelligence. The moral dilemma, a constant, dull ache, intensified with every shared laugh, every earnest conversation with Layla. The Raven, a machine of precision and cold resolve, felt a growing conflict between the unwavering commitment to the mission and the genuine human connection blossoming with these protesters. They were not pawns, they were people, with hopes and dreams, risking everything for a better future. The thought of their potential suffering, a direct or indirect consequence of the operation, began to gnaw at the edges of the Raven's steely determination. The line between duty and humanity blurred, creating an internal maelstrom. Meanwhile, intelligence confirmed the formidable nature of Qasem's security. He would be heavily guarded, a fortress of flesh and steel, even amidst the teeming throngs of the protest. A clean shot, a precise strike, seemed an almost impossible feat in such a chaotic environment. The Mossad team, operating in the shadows, relayed updates. Qasem's personal guard was a unit renowned for its ruthlessness and efficiency. The challenge was not merely reaching the general, but penetrating the impenetrable shield of his protectors. Then, a new obstacle arose, threatening to unravel the meticulously woven web of deception. An unexpected crackdown on protest organizers swept through the city. Several key figures, known to the Raven, vanished overnight, their apartments raided, their families left in terror. The fear rippled through the movement, threatening to expose the Ravens' network, to sever the vital connections that had been so painstakingly forged. The regime was tightening its grip, and the window of opportunity was rapidly closing. The Raven had to act decisively. Protecting Layla and other key contacts became paramount, not just for the mission, but for the burgeoning sense of responsibility that had taken root. A calculated risk was taken, a series of subtle maneuvers to divert attention, to create false trails, to ensure the safety of those who had unknowingly offered their trust. It drew unwanted attention from some quarters, a few suspicious glances from within the protest leadership, but it solidified the Ravens' cover even further, portraying an image of unwavering loyalty and courage in the face of escalating repression. It was during these tense days, as the network teetered on the brink of exposure, that a chilling revelation emerged. A potential traitor, lurking within the protest leadership itself, began to reveal subtle cracks in their facade. A discarded note, a whispered conversation overheard, an unnatural eagerness to volunteer certain information to new faces, all pointed to a serpent in their midst. This discovery, a venomous twist in an already precarious situation, threatened to compromise everything. The path to Qasim was now not just fraught with external dangers, but with an insidious betrayal from within, a betrayal that could doom the entire operation before it even began. The Raven, now acutely aware of the internal rot, initiated a subtle, almost imperceptible investigation. Every meeting, every shared meal, every hushed conversation within the protest leadership was scrutinized. The individual in question, a seemingly unassuming middle-aged man named Farhad, had always presented himself as a fervent advocate for change, his words laced with revolutionary fervor. Yet, a series of small, unsettling inconsistencies began to surface. Farhad's sudden acquisition of a new, expensive watch, his evasiveness when questioned about his frequent disappearances, and a peculiar pattern of information leakage that always seemed to benefit the regime's counterintelligence efforts, all pointed to a deeper, darker truth. The evidence mounted, piece by painstaking piece, revealing Farhad as a mole, an informant for the Revolutionary Guard. His motivation, the Raven deduced, was not ideological conviction, but a far more common, yet equally destructive, human frailty. Personal gain, and possibly coercion. Rumors of his family's mounting debts and a brother's recent arrest, now viewed through this new, cynical lens, painted a picture of a man trapped and desperate, willing to betray his comrades for survival or reward. This added another layer of human tragedy to the already complex tapestry of the mission. A reminder that even in the pursuit of justice, the lines between right and wrong often blurred into shades of grey. The discovery of the mole cast a long, chilling shadow over the protest group. A growing paranoia began to infect their ranks. A silent, corrosive doubt that eroded trust and made genuine communication increasingly difficult. Whispers turned to accusations, and suspicion coiled around every shared glance. This internal strife, while understandable, threatened to cripple their ability to organize, making the Ravens' information gathering even more perilous. The very unity that had made them a force was now fracturing under the weight of unseen betrayal. The Raven faced a strategic dilemma. Eliminating Farhad was a tempting, almost instinctual response, but it carried an unacceptable risk. Such an act would undoubtedly expose the Raven's true nature, unraveling the meticulously constructed cover and jeopardizing the entire operation. Instead, a more cunning approach was required. The mole's actions had to be turned into an advantage, his betrayal weaponized against his own handlers. The Raven began to feed carefully crafted misinformation to Farhad, subtle distortions and misdirections woven into genuine protest plans, designed to divert the Revolutionary Guard's attention from the true target. Farhad, eager to prove his worth and secure his illicit payments, unknowingly became a conduit for the Raven's strategic deception. It was during this delicate dance of manipulation that Layla, with her keen observations and growing intuition, began to notice the subtle cracks in Farhad's facade. She confided in the Raven, her brow furrowed with concern, describing his strange behavior, his sudden wealth, and the way his eyes seemed to linger a moment too long on certain documents. Her innocent suspicions, born of genuine concern for the movement, confirmed the Raven's own conclusions and added a layer of urgency to the plan. The Raven decided a subtle confrontation was necessary, a clear, silent warning without revealing the depth of their knowledge or true identity. One evening, after a particularly tense meeting, the Raven approached Farhad alone. There were no accusations, no threats. Only a piercing, knowing gaze and a single, carefully chosen phrase about the dangers of divided loyalties. The message, delivered with an unnerving calm, was unmistakable. Farhad, visibly rattled, his composure crumbling under the weight of unspoken accusations, retreated into himself. The psychological pressure worked. The mole, now shaken and uncertain, his illicit world suddenly feeling precarious, inadvertently revealed a crucial piece of intelligence. In a desperate attempt to regain a sense of control and perhaps prove his continued usefulness, he disclosed details about Qasim's exact route to the protest site and the composition of his personal security detail, information he had gleaned from his handlers. Unbeknownst to him, Farhad had just provided the Raven with the final critical piece of the puzzle, unknowingly aiding the very mission he was betraying. The path to Qasim, once an impossible labyrinth, now had a discernible, albeit dangerous, route. The air in Tehran was thick with a palpable tension, a heavy silence pregnant with anticipation before the storm. The city, usually bustling, felt like a coiled spring. Every street corner, every alleyway, a potential flashpoint. The day of the protest had arrived, and with it, a pervasive sense of fear and defiance that settled over everything. The Mossad team, a symphony of silent purpose, moved into their pre-assigned positions. Each operative, a cog in a meticulously designed machine, understood the gravity of the moment, the immense stakes riding on their every move. The weight of their mission, a geopolitical gambit played out in the heart of enemy territory, pressed down on them, yet their resolve remained unshaken. For the Raven, the internal struggle was a tempest. The cold, hard logic of the mission warred with the unexpected tendrils of connection forged in the crucible of deception. Layla's unwavering idealism, her genuine belief in the cause, had inadvertently woven itself into the fabric of the Raven's hardened resolve. The thought of the impending chaos, the potential collateral damage, gnawed at the edges of a mind trained for ruthless efficiency. Yet, the burning image of past losses, the faces of those wronged by Qasim's brutality, sharpened the focus, pushing aside doubt, leaving only a cold, determined resolve. As the morning wore on, the streets began to swell, a trickle of individuals growing into a torrent of humanity. Thousands flooded the thoroughfares, their voices, initially hesitant, rising into a defiant roar. The protest erupted with a raw, untamed energy, a chaotic, unpredictable environment that was both a shield and a potential trap. Banners swayed, slogans chanted, and the rhythmic beat of marching feet became the pulse of a city in rebellion. Then, through the surging sea of protesters, a hush fell, followed by a ripple of murmurs. Qasim's motorcade, a dark, armored beast, sliced through the crowd, an insolent display of power amidst the defiant masses. The general, a symbol of everything they despised, was visible for a fleeting moment, a stark reminder of the oppression they sought to overthrow. The sight galvanized the Raven, transforming internal conflict into a singular, focused intent. The plan, a blueprint meticulously crafted and rehearsed, began its execution. The Raven, a shadow within the crowd, maneuvered with practiced ease, a ghost in the machine of human emotion. Each step was calculated, every glance assessing, sifting through the chaos for opportunities, for threats. But the urban battlefield was fluid, unpredictable. An unexpected surge of protesters redirected a planned route. A sudden tightening of Revolutionary Guard security around a specific intersection created an unforeseen bottleneck. The designated vantage point, chosen for its clear line of sight and relatively secure escape route, was compromised, now swarming with Basij militia. A cold dread momentarily gripped the Raven. The careful planning, the meticulous preparation, threatened to unravel in the face of reality's brutal indifference. A quick, almost instinctive recalculation was needed. An alternate approach, riskier, less secure, but offering a chance, presented itself. It involved a higher degree of exposure, a more perilous escape, but it was the only path left. The Raven pushed through the crowd, a relentless current against the tide, every fiber of being focused on the objective. Then, through a momentary parting in the human sea, amidst the swirling dust and the cacophony of shouts, a pair of eyes met. Qasem, from the fortified cage of his vehicle, his gaze sweeping over the enraged faces, paused. For a fraction of a second, his eyes locked with the Raven's. It was a moment of chilling recognition, an unspoken challenge passing between predator and prey. For the Raven, it was a surge of raw determination, a silent vow that this conflict, years in the making, would finally find its brutal end. The target was in sight. The storm was about to break. The world seemed to slow, then accelerate into a blur of motion. The Raven, fueled by that primal connection, that mutual recognition of impending fate, moved with a sudden, decisive grace. The chaotic energy of the protest, once a hindrance, now became a weapon. A surge of protesters, pushed forward by the sheer density of the crowd, provided the perfect cover. The carefully concealed weapon, a compact silenced pistol, was drawn in one fluid motion. Its cold steel a familiar weight in a moment of burning intensity. There was no hesitation, no second thoughts, only the target. A single, precise shot cut through the cacophony, almost unheard amidst the roars of the crowd, yet devastatingly effective. It found its mark, a small, dark blossom appearing on Qasem's chest, just above the heart. The general's eyes widened in a fleeting instant of shock, disbelief, and then, nothing. His imposing figure slumped within the armored vehicle, a symbol of power suddenly rendered impotent. The vehicle, momentarily stalled by the impact, then lurched forward, its occupants thrown into disarray. A collective gasp rippled through the immediate vicinity, followed by a terrifying, guttural scream from one of Qasem's bodyguards, a sound that pierced the protest's roar and heralded the ensuing pandemonium. Confusion reigned supreme. For a split second, the crowd hesitated, processing the impossible. Then, like a dam breaking, panic erupted. The roar of defiance transformed into a shriek of terror, a tide of humanity surging backward, crushing all in its path. The Raven, already moving, used the human wave as a shield, an engine for escape. Every instinct honed by years of training kicked in, guiding a desperate dash through the panicked crowd. The disguise, the meticulously crafted persona, became both a blessing and a curse. Blending in was easy, but navigating the stampede without being crushed was a brutal test of agility and strength. Hands reached out, bodies collided, but the Raven moved with a singular focus, a ghost in the storm, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable chaos and the chilling silence of a mission accomplished. Layla, caught in the throes of the protest, had been chanting alongside her comrades, her voice hoarse with fervent hope. Then, the shot, the sudden silence, the collective gasp, the horrifying realization, as Qasem's motorcade swerved violently. She saw the general slump, saw the dark stain spread, And then, through the terror, she saw a figure, a familiar figure, moving with unnatural speed against the tide of fleeing bodies. It was the Raven, the quiet, intense activist she had come to trust. Her worldview, already fragile from the constant struggle, shattered into 1,000 pieces. The hope, the shared grievances, the camaraderie, all of it now tainted by the brutal reality of what had just transpired. The true nature of the Raven's presence, the deep, dark secret, unfurled before her, cold and unforgiving. Within moments, the wail of sirens pierced the air, a terrifying chorus accompanying the thunder of heavy boots. Revolutionary Guard forces, initially caught off guard, now flooded the area, their faces grim, their weapons raised. A relentless manhunt began, a dragnet descending upon the terrified populace. Every exit was sealed, every alleyway searched. The city, once vibrant with protest, became a cage. Meanwhile, the Mossad support unit, positioned at various strategic points surrounding the protest, found themselves under immediate and intense scrutiny. Their carefully planned extraction routes were compromised, their retreat cut off. Heavy resistance met their attempts to move, their positions revealed by the sudden, overwhelming response. Gunfire erupted in the narrow streets adjacent to the main square, the sharp crack of rifles echoing through the urban canyons. Their mission, once a clean, surgical strike, had devolved into a desperate fight for survival. One of the team members, a young operative named Ari, saw the Raven's path of escape blocked by a rapidly deploying cordon of guardsmen. Without a moment's hesitation, he made a critical diversion. A flashbang, followed by a burst of automatic fire directed at a nearby vehicle, drew the full attention of the pursuing forces. It was a calculated act of self-sacrifice, guaranteeing the Raven's potential escape, but sealing Ari's own fate. He knew it, and the Raven, catching a fleeting glimpse of his comrade's last defiant stand, knew it too. But even with Ari's sacrifice, the net was tightening. The Raven, wounded by a ricochet, stumbled into a dead-end alley, the metallic taste of blood filling the mouth. The cacophony of the city, the shouts and sirens, seemed to converge, pressing in from all sides. Footsteps pounded closer, the harsh commands of the Revolutionary Guard echoing off the ancient walls. Cornered, facing an impossible choice, the Raven gripped the silenced pistol, its weight now heavy with the burden of a mission accomplished. But at what cost? Fight to the death, or surrender, with no hope of rescue. The storm had broken, and the Raven was at its brutal heart. The Raven, a ghost of a warrior, found the alleyway shrinking, the walls closing in like a crypt. The metallic tang of blood in the mouth was a grim reminder of the ricochet, a searing pain in the side that pulsed with each ragged breath. 3 guardsmen rounded the corner, their faces contorted in a mask of fury and determination, their rifles leveled. There was no escape, no retreat. This was it. With a primal roar that tore from deep within, the Raven moved, a blur of trained ferocity. The silenced pistol, a familiar extension of the arm, barked twice, precise and deadly. 2 of the guardsmen crumpled, their cries choked off before they hit the grimy asphalt. The 3rd, momentarily stunned, raised his rifle, but the Raven was already upon him, a whirlwind of elbows and knees, a sickening crack, and the last guard fell, lifeless. But the victory was fleeting. More footsteps, more shouts, closer now. The sound of a heavy door being kicked open echoed from the main street. The Raven's body screamed in protest, every muscle burning, every wound throbbing. Just as despair threatened to consume, a figure darted into the alley, a shadow amidst the chaos. It was Layla. Her eyes, wide with a mixture of terror and an unfamiliar resolve, met the Raven's. She didn't speak, but her intention was clear. She pointed towards a rusted iron grate, almost hidden by rubble, leading to a subterranean passage, a secret known only to a few. Then, with a sudden, desperate surge of courage. She let out a piercing scream, a cry of anguish and fear designed to draw attention away, to mislead the relentless pursuit. She began to run in the opposite direction, her small frame disappearing into the labyrinthine alleys, a selfless act born of a complex mix of emotions. Fear for her city, betrayal at the mission's true purpose, yet a strange, undeniable bond forged in shared danger. The diversion worked. The pounding footsteps hesitated, then veered towards Layla's desperate cries. The Raven, seizing the precious seconds, tore at the grate, its rusty hinges groaning in protest. With a final, agonizing heave, it gave way, revealing a dark, damp tunnel. Scrambling through, the air thick with the stench of stagnant water and earth. The Raven could still hear the distant shouts, the frantic search. The escape was brutal, a crawl through darkness, each movement sending fresh waves of agony through the wounded body. Hours later, battered and bleeding, the Raven emerged miles away, at a prearranged secondary extraction point, a nondescript fishing boat bobbing gently in the Caspian Sea. The journey across the water was a blur of pain and exhaustion, the rhythmic lapping of waves doing little to soothe the turmoil within. Back in the safety of a sterile debriefing room, far from the ravaged streets of Tehran, the Raven was patched up, the wounds tended to with cold, professional efficiency. But the physical scars were nothing compared to the ones etched upon the soul. The victory felt hollow, a bitter ash in the mouth. Qasem was dead, yes, but at what cost? The streets of Tehran were under martial law, widespread arrests sweeping through the city, crushing the very spirit of the protest. The Mossad team, once an elite unit, was decimated. Some were captured, their fates unknown, others confirmed dead, their sacrifices weighing heavily on the Raven's conscience. Ari's face, defiant in his last stand, was a haunting image. The moral compromises, the collateral damage, the genuine human connections exploited for a mission, it all coalesced into a suffocating shroud of guilt. Was this vengeance, or just another cycle of violence? The questions gnawed, relentless. Then, weeks later, a small, unmarked package arrived. Inside, a single folded piece of paper, smudged and creased. It was a drawing, hastily sketched, of a bird with broken wings flying over a city in flames, and beneath it, a single, cryptic word, written in Farsi. Hope? It was from Layla, a desperate plea or perhaps a challenge, hinting at a future reckoning that still bound them together across borders and through the ashes of a revolution. The world reeled in the aftermath of Qasem's assassination. Geopolitical analysts scrambled to interpret the seismic shift in the regional power balance. For a brief, intoxicating period, a palpable sense of triumph permeated the intelligence communities of Qasem's adversaries. Yet, the jubilant headlines and clandestine celebrations belied the profound and often devastating long-term consequences that rippled through the region. The temporary vacuum created by his demise was quickly filled, not by peace, but by a reshuffling of allegiances and a hardening of resolve among the remaining hardliners, proving that the roots of conflict ran far deeper than any single individual. For the Raven, the victory was a phantom limb, an ache that lingered long after the physical wounds had healed. The sterile walls of the safe house, the hushed voices of the debriefing teams, offered no solace. The quiet hum of the air conditioning was a stark contrast to the cacophony of Tehran, a sound that now haunted every waking moment and invaded every fitful dream. The faces of the fallen team members, Ari's defiant last stand, the desperate cries of the protesters, and Layla's brave, self-sacrificing act. They were all etched into the Raven's consciousness, a relentless tapestry of sacrifice and moral compromise. The path forward, away from the shadows, seemed impossibly steep, yet utterly necessary. The thirst for vengeance had been quenched, but it had left behind a profound emptiness, a yearning for a different kind of purpose. In Tehran, the protest movement, though brutally suppressed, gained an unexpected, almost mythical strength. Qasim's death, rather than extinguishing their flame, had inadvertently forged it into an enduring symbol of defiance. The regime's iron fist descended with unprecedented force, but the embers of resistance glowed brighter in the dark. Layla, in particular, became an unwitting icon. Her act of courage, her quiet defiance in the face of overwhelming power, resonated deeply within the underground networks. She had witnessed the true brutality of the regime, the intricate dance of foreign intervention, and the profound, often tragic, cost of both. She was no longer just a student. She was a living testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience, a symbol of hope born from the ashes of despair. The cryptic message, the drawing of the bird with broken wings, burned in the raven's memory. It was a plea, a challenge, a testament to a connection forged in the crucible of chaos. The raven knew a response was required, not as a Mossad operative, but as a human being burdened by the weight of shared experience. An act of atonement, subtle and anonymous, began to form. Funds, carefully laundered and untraceable, found their way to the families of those arrested during the crackdown, to organizations providing humanitarian aid to the displaced, and, most importantly, to a small, burgeoning network dedicated to documenting human rights abuses within Iran, a network Layla was rumored to be a part of. It was a gesture, small in the face of such widespread suffering, yet significant for the Raven. This quiet, anonymous support became the Raven's new purpose. The skills honed in the shadows were now redirected, not for destruction, but for the quiet, meticulous work of building, protecting, and empowering. The cold calculations of espionage were replaced by the profound satisfaction of genuine, albeit indirect, assistance. The redemption arc was not a sudden, dramatic transformation, but a slow, arduous climb out of the abyss of moral ambiguity. The lingering questions remained, however, like persistent ghosts. Was the price too high? Had justice truly been served, or had one form of violence merely been replaced by another? The answers were elusive, perhaps unknowable. The Raven stood at a window overlooking a vast, unfamiliar landscape, the sun rising over distant mountains, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The past was a heavy cloak, but a flicker of hope, fragile yet persistent, illuminated the horizon. The bird, with broken wings, in Layla's drawing, was not falling. It was soaring, having found a new kind of flight. The journey was far from over, but the path ahead, though still uncertain, was no longer shrouded in the darkness of vengeance, but in the quiet, enduring light of a different kind of purpose.